phase it's in now, I know that they selected a flavor and now they're in the promotion phase. So if you went to, I think it's democracy.com, you'd be able to see, but they leveraged all sorts of social media outlets to have people do voting. They even did on the street. So they leveraged the iPad and had it on trucks, and people could literally walk up and vote at that time, and it tallied the vote for which flavor that they liked. And then they actually are creating the product based upon the feedback that they got from the client, from their crowds and their fans. So again, getting your audience to feel like they're part of the development of the process or the development of the content, it makes rabid followers, and they're also like, look, here's a picture of me in Dallas voting on Whiteout, which was the flavor that was approved, and all of a sudden they're sharing with everybody because they voted and they're visible, they're part of it.
And just how much you hear around the water cooler after Dancing with the Stars or American Idol. I mean, that's on the most basic level, a perfect example, and how much that has influenced over the years the kinds of contestants that they've chosen to put on those shows.
Right. And I can't
that
believe
is their
I
market research.
didn't mention this project that I was part of this year. So there are these guys that created this idea of telling the story of 2010. Well, it's being told by 365 writers. I was fortunate enough to be one of those writers. Basically, each writer has to pick one day, and you are responsible for documenting that day from your perspective. Not like a world perspective, but you document that one day from your perspective. And so throughout the year of 2010, they've had, one person each day blogging on this blog. And if anybody wants to look at it, it's THE3SIX5.com. The 365, it's called the 365 Project. And at the end of the year, they're hoping to, publish it as a book. But basically, you've got 365 people writing this for you.
And it just worked. Right? So all you guys know about it now.
Yeah.
And
And you're going to tweet it.
Whoever can see this on the video, whenever they watch that, they're going to check it out, right?
Yeah.
That was because she was involved. She had ownership. She got bought in. I mean,
Well, that's true.
She was
'cause
asked. And some people are like, hey, you want to be a part of something cool?
And I've hugely promoted for them because I was part of it. And so have all the others who have been part of it.
Well, that's 365 people who have 700 friends on Facebook, whose 700 friends have 800 friends on Facebook, and so it just goes like that.
And do you know how big the lists are? I mean, how often do you tweet, or how did you get involved with the project? Were you chosen because of your influence, your circle of influence, or how did they choose the writers for that project?
Actually, I'll tell you, it's interesting as far as how I got involved in it. The two guys who started the project, one is the guy behind @Statesman, so the Twitter account for the Statesman. He's also the American Statesman's social media editor. And then the other guy, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Colonel Tribune on Twitter, but he was the guy who invented Colonel Tribune, which is, has 150,000 followers or 200,000 followers now. Anyways, but I was at PR Newswire. We were all just getting started around the same time, so we kind of got to know each other on Twitter. And then when this project came around, which they put together, they were like, hey, do you want to join it with us? And they knew too. I think, some of the people that they picked, and it wasn't the only reason they picked certain people, but, they wanted people that would have they knew would help to promote and have some, kind of influence. So not that all the people involved in the project are, but it does help, when you can get influencers involved in your project.
Brilliant on their part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about different kinds of media tools. Are some better than others? Does it just depend upon how you use them? There's so many things out there, Twitter, Facebook, various campaigns you can use, cross media platforms here. If you only had a couple of $1,000s to spend, would there be one method that you would choose over some of the others, and why?
I just personally think it's geared towards whatever product you have. So if it's you have to find what your fan base is. You got to find out what that target audience is. It's better to define what you're trying to create and find that target audience and hit those people instead of creating something, not knowing really what your demographic and target audience is, and then just flooding the market with it, you're better off just kind of defining what really target audience you have.
And finding where they are. Yeah.
Travis? No?
Yeah. No, I'm
Okay.
good.
You two want to add anything, or good answer?
Yep.
Well, yeah, I think the main thing is just knowing where your audience is, figuring out where they are, you know. It may be that for your particular film, you know, the genre, whatever, maybe there's not very many people interested on Twitter, but maybe there's a lot of people on MySpace. You know, a lot of people have moved away from MySpace, but there's still certain audiences that, you know, that's where they go. And maybe that's where you need to be.
Do you want to talk about mobile media at all, or just the trend? It seems everything is sort of going smaller and to mobile. It seems like all of these are just tools too.
Right.
Again, what you have to have, like you've always had to have, is a good, solid publicity and marketing campaign.
Right.
I think if you can come up with something compelling to do with mobile, it's an interesting channel. We had a couple of campaigns that just were complete, I don't want to say failures, because nothing I work on is a failure. Not as successful as we had planned online, and had an insane response on mobile applications. And I really, to me, I'm still a little perplexed about it. Like, you have to go into the App Store, you have to start searching for some random thing, you have to find it, you have to choose to download it. It seems like so much more work than I went to web, I clicked on button. But I mean, it was insane, the response that we got on the web application. So I don't know if you guys remember back in the beginning of the TV show Lost, Sprite had a campaign called Subliminal, which I thought was just absolutely brilliant because it was sort of its own webisode. It created some mystery around the brand, and people were actually leaving the television and going online to find out what was happening on Subliminal. And now you've got people sitting at their television with their phones and their laptop and their iPad. I mean, they may as well have some sort of futuristic cockpit around them because they're on all their channels all at one time. And the more channels you're reaching them at, the more compelling your campaign can be. Personally, this is not a marketing statement. This is not a professional statement. Personally, I think the more diverse you make those channels with a cohesive message, the more interesting it is. So if you've got your character development going on in blogs, but you've got an app that allows you to upload your own head to the character's body, or please don't do that. But that there's multiple different ways for you to interact with your content in a multitude of different channels. It's people are using all of them and they're advocating for all of them.
And back to knowing your audience, you know, there's certain groups that are more likely to be accessing the internet right here, you know, younger groups, Europe, Asia, you know, most people are accessing it through mobile devices. So knowing who your audience is and where they are. And also, you know, let me mention Foursquare, how many people know what Foursquare is? So it's a mobile application where you kind of check in and say, I'm here and I'm doing this. So I checked in to say I was in, you know, this place and that I'm here speaking with, you know, the Women of Film, Dallas. And, you know, it tells all the people on Foursquare, and there's a lot of people on Foursquare who follow. Plus, it went to my Twitter and my Facebook, so all those people know as well. So, and there are companies like Bravo, let's say, you know, who's using Foursquare during, you know, you're watching their show and you can check in, you know, for certain things and you get badges, etc. You know, so you can build like games using mobile devices to kind of help with whatever you're doing. But you just have to be creative, and I think the room is filled with creative people.
I think
right?
something that's interesting is 10 years ago, I guess I'm telling my age now, but let's see, what is this year? It's 2010. Okay, so it was
So you were 16.
It was, yes, I was. It was more like 11 years ago. I was dabbling in something interesting called mobile web applications and mobile applications. This was the very beginnings of all of this. And we were actually teaching people how to develop on these applications. And I thought text messaging was the dumbest thing ever. And there was literally, so they had created text messaging, and you could only get it on a GSM network. And I'm sorry, I'm throwing letters out there, but and a company called VoiceStream was the only place in Texas that you could get this. And VoiceStream was based in Austin. I drove to Austin to go get my GSM phone so that I could be on the cutting edge. And I thought, oh my God, we're back to telegraphing. Like, I wanted to type the word stop. Well, who knew? Who knew 10 years later that people are wrecking cars into telephone poles because they can't stop doing it, right? I think the key, what's interesting is you can grab onto what's already there, but you also have to take some risks. I never would have advised any of my clients to get into some sort of text messaging scheme. And then look, I mean, it's gangbusters. So you need to go with a mixture of the sure things, the audiences that you know that you can reach, and be willing to kind of throw yourself out there on a limb, because you could be hitching your wagon onto the next best thing. But just like any investment, you could also be hitching your wagon to an albatross. But nevertheless, that's what's interesting about this new media, is every day there's a new thing. And Foursquare, interestingly enough, has been just all over the place, and Facebook Places, all they had to do was expand their platform this much. And Foursquare is in danger now, because Facebook Places, where 80% of our population is doing everything that Foursquare is doing.
You don't get badges from
You
Facebook.
don't get badges.
You
those
get
damn
badges, just like Boy Scout badges. So I have my little badge page, that shows, so I can show other geeks, look how many badges I've got. I got the voting badge this week, which is a brand new badge. I'm so proud. I can show everyone later if you want. But also, I was going to say, with the texting, that's where Twitter got started, right? Mm-hmm. That's why the limit of 140
Which is another thing I
characters.
thought was asinine.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Yeah, so, the limit of 140 characters is because that's how much you could text, and it kind of stuck with that.
So basically what I said is, don't listen to me. I just pretty much said, don't listen to me.
Do you want to talk a little bit about webisodes and just your intent with doing a webisode? Was that to use that just as exposure? What did you create specifically for the web in doing these shorter little episodic segments, or was this pretty much as a way to use this as a splash page or an online brochure to get you other kinds of projects?
No, we back in Spectre Mom, I guess that was 4 years ago now. And speaking of texting, I'm going to step out in a second, not to be rude, but my daughter has been texting me like 8 times since I've been sitting here. And
Do it here.
she's at home sick, and apparently the big brother's not doing his job. So I'm going to step out and make sure the house is not on fire. Yeah. It's already burned down by now anyway, right? We created the webisode content for the web, and it was a little bit of a newbie back in the day when we did this, 4 or 5 years ago. But it was where we would have to film the television broadcast episodes differently than we film the webisode